Welcome to the 35th episode of A Change of the Champs. My name is Ryan Lowe, and my goal is to educate listeners, especially the youth, on the most polarizing issues in this world by interviewing different experts who can lead us into the charge for change. Did you know that more than 70% of Gen Z are extremely concerned about climate change? That's not surprising, right? But what is surprising is that only 35% of Gen Z are actively engaged in climate activism. We have to be able to do better. In this episode, I'm very excited to welcome an organization that is devoted to mobilizing young climate activists through communities, education, and inspiration. Today, I'm speaking with the co-chair of the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit, or BayCS for short, which is an entirely youth-led network of activists advocating for climate action with educational workshops, discussions, and guidance. Founded in 2020, the BayCS has run monthly workshops, climate summits, one of which I attended as a delegate for the Headway School, and other initiatives ranging from Career Expo to a hygiene kit donation drive. So, today I am excited to introduce Finn Dose, a co-chair of this organization. So how you doing today, Finn?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, let's first dig into some background on the organizations. For our listeners, what exactly is the BayCS and why and how was it founded?
Yeah, so the Bay Area Climate Summit was founded in 2020 out of a need for more effective virtual activism during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, there was a lot of activism silos, and a lot of youth were struggling because they were isolated and needed community. So basically, the Bay Area Climate Summit was founded as a way to unite us in the cause for climate justice together, and provide a platform for us to come together in community. But since then, we basically have shifted more into like in-person format. But we host like monthly workshops and an annual summit and do all sorts of other advocacy and educational work in the Bay Area, that really puts youth at like the center of the environmental conversation and the environmental fight.
That's really great. And I know when I attended the summit, there were a lot of different people there. So how large is this BayCS community?
Yeah, so I would say that like one of the special things about BCS is the fact that we have youth from all different neighborhoods and pockets of the Bay Area. So in that sense, we're very broad. I would say that our community is definitely sort of in the thousands. We usually have at our summits between like 150 to 300 youth show up in attendance. That being said, our network is around like 7,000 youth.
That's really cool. So with those 7,000 youth that you're talking about, what initiative are you most proud of within the group, and what was its impact on these people?
That's a good question. I would say, hmm, I guess that I was most proud probably was our recent summit at the California Academy of Sciences, because I feel like it was a very inspiring event and it took a lot to pull off. And it was great to have such a diversity of viewpoints and lived experiences there. One thing that I loved about it was the fact that we had workshops on so many different topics around climate justice, workshops ranging from queer ecology and how queer ecological theory can inform how we think about the future, to workshops around climate mental health and workshops on BIPOC climate organizing. So we really covered so many different topics and such a breadth of climate issues. And that was really satisfying to me. I think another thing too that was beautiful about the summit was the fact that we put so much of our energy and like our emotions into that event, and to see it all come together and to see so many youth walking away wanting to get involved further in climate action was really fulfilling.
Yeah, I also found that summit really diverse. Like, I went to a workshop on mushrooms and then another workshop on climate policy. That was really great.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So,
I didn't get the chance to attend all of the workshops because I was running around organizing.
yeah, remember the fire alarm that went off?
Yeah, there's always little things with events that happen you have to work around.
Yeah. It was really great though. So, what are some of the most significant challenges that you face as a youth leader, and how do you specifically address them to effectively lead and support your peers?
I would say one thing is definitely navigating adults and institutions trying to co-opt youth work or youth voices. I definitely think like there's a huge issue around like tokenizing youth voices. So oftentimes like we'll get invited to go to panels or to host a booth at an event and we're the only youth there because it's sort of like a bucket list item they have to check off on an agenda to make sure that like they have some sort of youth voice at their event. And I think that's great and all, but you need to practice like what you preach. So really like thinking about how can we center youth voices instead of just like giving youth a voice, since I think there's a difference. Like youth innately have a voice, and how do you like build that and foster that up instead of just like handing them the mic for a second and then taking it right back. So I definitely think that's one of our issues is the tokenization of youth voices. And then I think another huge one would definitely be like the sort of epidemic of like isolation in our community and for youth across the nation and the world. I think that we're living in a really interesting time where it's sort of like the post-pandemic world and also to a world dominated by social media. And I think both of those factors contribute to increase like mental health issues and isolation among youth. So that all sort of factors and merges and meshes with um, the whole context of living in an era of climate crisis. So that's definitely like an issue and a challenge that we've been trying to tackle through trying to create more spaces for community and spaces of vulnerability where people can actually come to a workshop and like share about how they're doing and their emotions and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and pushing the two things you were talking about together, like youth voices and mental health, youth are often patronized by adults into thinking that they no longer have the ability to change anything. And then that's also going to negatively affect our mental health. So everything stems back to these different problems. So,
Yeah, no, yeah.
oh, sorry. Uh, what would you say motivates you to continue serving as a youth leader? And how do you maintain your enthusiasm and dedication despite things like youth not getting a voice or climate mental health problems?
I would say what continues to give me momentum in the organizing sphere in the organizing life would definitely be the community. I think that that's very broad. But what that means for me is being able to have so much trust and faith and know that I have my community's back and to see how much we actually are always building together. So for instance, like when we create or host a workshop and youth come together at the workshop and I see new faces there, to me, that's a win. To me, that's what we got new people on board. And that gives me a sense of sort of like hope. And I think this is one thing that I've definitely clung to in my organizing is that um, hope is an action. It's not a passive thing. So basically, you can't be given hope. You have to create and make hope. So I think that's one of the things that keeps me hopeful and optimistic and motivated is the fact that every time that I organize, I feel like I get a greater sense of possibility for what the future holds. And I remember not to give up and not to give in to the doom and gloom messaging that so much of the mainstream media likes to
Yeah,
perpetuate and spread across the world.
that's a really great thing to be fighting for. So let's talk a bit more about Base ES. Today, I saw you at the climate strike organized by Youth versus Apocalypse. But what are some other events coming up on the Base ES calendar, and how can youth and listeners participate?
Yeah, I'd love to share about that. Thank you so much for giving me the platform. I would say one of the big things that we do each year is our annual Earth Day festival. That's very much centered around like climate joy and intersectional environmentalism and putting solutions at the center of the climate conversation and sort of pushing the problems to the side with our hopes and possibilities and dreams.
That's a really great one. And that's coming up
Yeah.
next Monday, right?
Yeah, no, so actually it's coming up on Sunday the 28th. So next weekend, I'm pretty sure, or the weekend after. I think it's next weekend. And it's called, this year's theme for our Earth Day Festival is our Reclaim Our Futures Climate Solutions for People Plus Planet. So the whole idea of that is that we're going to have different booths from different high schools and local youth groups around working around sort of engaging youth around different environmental themes that are rooted in solutions and in future building. And then another thing that's super cool about this event is that we like to put an emphasis on like live music and eco-inspired art. So we're sort of blending the two.
That's really great. Make sure that I can make it.
Awesome. We'd love to see you there. And then I'd also love to share about some other events that we have coming up too. In May, we're hoping to organize a policy workshop, bringing together like local leaders from different spheres of the local policy and climate policy space. So we're hopefully going to have some local politicians and maybe even some advocates or more like activist folks.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to younger activists who have been discouraged from speaking their minds or taking action against today's status quo? What would you say to them?
I would say find your people. So if you have a calling or an urge or a question, go forth with that urge or that question. Don't just bury it and let someone tell you what to do. So I definitely think like do the research. If you have access to a library or the internet or a laptop, go research local groups in your area that are doing things around climate that are answering or starting to address that question that you have, that calling, and reach out to them and join forces. I think that's one of the biggest things. It's like finding community as soon as you can is so vital and so important, since it's so easy to feel like you're here trying to answer or solve or address this question alone by yourself with the weight of it on your shoulders. So that would definitely be my go-to tip.
That is really good advice for people who want to start out in this world. So, on that topic, do you remember when you first wanted to start on this? When you first became passionate on climate issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think before I knew that it was climate justice, it was just an innate appreciation for my community and my family and the earth and the land that we share. I've always been a very in touch child with the natural world, and very much have always like seen animals and plants and flora and fauna and all of the beings that we occupy this planet with as almost like family or as each deserving of sense of personhood. So I think that for me definitely has always been a running theme in my life, where it merged more into a more like intersectional understanding of climate justice, where then I became more involved in like organizing, was around all of the wildfires that were hitting California in 2020 and 2019. I was very, very freaked out, and it threw me into a depression. And I had a lot of friends and family with respiratory and lung conditions that were exacerbated by the fire smoke and all of that. So, in that sense, I started to see that this wasn't as much about biodiversity loss and conservation as it also was about equity and inclusion and who has resources and who doesn't, and who has the disproportionate impacts. So in that sense, I really started to feel like I needed to get involved. Um, and I don't think I can't imagine a life where I wasn't doing climate organizing, just because it seems so unlike me.
Yeah, that switch from climate to climate justice is really the most amazing or the most worrying, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think like it's super important and vital that we incorporate the justice and the intersectionality into our lens of environmental issues. And that being said, though, too, like it also is super worrying because there's so many people and so many folks in this country that are very much on the front lines of the climate crisis, and are going to be and are completely disproportionately impacted by climate disasters or sea level rise. So there's a lot to be done.
Yeah. And that what you're talking about there, these disproportionate impact, it is just important to the climate movement as plastic and plants and animals are. And it's very important that everyone understands that.
And I think too, perhaps like it's very important to understand that so many of the reasons why we have these problems with biodiversity loss and plastic in our oceans is because the climate crisis is a manifestation of colonialism and capitalism and extraction to the earth that began long before we started seeing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch emerge. So it's really about a crisis of relationship.
Yeah, everything is connected. So fast forward 10 years after we've been talking about all these things, even though you will have already graduated from college and be doing amazing things out there in the workforce, what do you want BCS to become?
Oh my gosh, no one has asked me that question before. I like that question. I hope that BCS is a I hope that it's still very much local, because I think that's while national led movements are super important, we have a lot of them. We have Sunrise Movement, we have Zero Hour. And I think that it's super important to stay on a local level. So what I hope is that I hope that BCS can one have like a headquarters somewhere. I hope that we can have a gathering place that is ours and that is self governed by youth, almost sort of like a collective or some sort of like commune like structure where we can come together in a physical place. I also hope that JCS has more of the ability to support itself and fund itself. And I think that that's definitely been a difficult thing, where all of the work that I've done throughout high school and all of my peers have has been entirely volunteer. And I think it's hard because a lot of people need to be able to support their families at the same time and can't do climate work, because doing climate work sometimes when it's completely volunteer is very much a reflection of one's privilege, because not everyone has the ability to lend their time to all of this work when they need to think about getting food on the table or supporting a loved one that's in a critical care situation where they don't have substantial health care. So I definitely think being able to have more financial liberties is one important thing. And then another, I think, on the more sort of like possibilities, dreamlike scale would be being able to have shifted our system, at least on a local level, in a way that environmental justice can become like a central part of everyone's life. Whether that's school courses across the Bay Area all incorporate environmental justice, or we're living with this as a central like tenet of our moral beliefs and whatnot.
Well, just seeing all the success you guys have been having today and the impact, I do believe you'll be able to make it to all of those goals.
I certainly hope so. I'm glad that you think that we've been successful.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That's all I have for you today.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's been so lovely to be in conversation, and I really appreciate you giving BCS and myself this platform and this opportunity.
Well, I've just learned so much about the organization. Youth organizations that are as powerful as this aren't that easy to come by, and what you and BCS have been doing is very inspiring to me.
Well, I definitely hope that you continue your journey in the climate space.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Finn. It's been really great talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much.
I want to close by repeating what Finn said. Hope is an action. It is not a passive thing. You can't be given it. You have to create and make it yourself. I really believe these are words we, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, should live by. Let's get out there and make our voices not just heard, but stay and make a lasting impact. Thank you so much for listening. That's it for episode 35 of A Change of the Chance. Please check out the baycs.org website, and I hope to see you at their next event. Thank you.